"When's the shower?" I asked. "Oh, we did it last night," my daughter-in-law chirped. "Inner circle. People who lift us up." Instagram confetti. The stroller I paid for rolls through their party. My kitchen clock ticks like a lie detector. I set down Nana's lemon bars and do the only math that matters. Rent, repairs, daycare. $26,230. Love shouldn't look like autopay. So I flip the switches. Transfers off, alerts on, verbal password added. If you're not inviting me, you're not invoicing me. Then the postcard lands. Franklin County. Proposed deed. Someone penciled me onto a calendar to sign away my house. They send a mobile notary to my porch with 2 witnesses and a smile. I don't open the door. I open my camera. Leave in 3 minutes or I call Hilliard PD. Next call is to an attorney who believes in paper. Fraud alerts filed, gates locked. And then my own son files emergency guardianship to protect me. Protect me. I survived Ohio winters and 32 Christmas mail seasons. I know every shutoff valve in this house and the price of every favor I've paid. If they want a signature, they can meet me downtown under oath. I'm Elaine. I may bake lemon bars, but today I'm serving boundaries. The next morning, I drove to my PNC branch on Main and out in Darby. Ms. Patel was the kind of woman who noticed haircuts. She could fold a scarf 4 ways without looking and tell you which ATM was least likely to jam. I sat in her office with the blinds half open, the sunlight striping the desk in clean lines. "What can we do for you today, Miss Porter?" she asked, humming a little as she clicked her mouse. "I'm ending 2 monthly transfers, and I want to lock my online banking tighter than a pickle jar. I'd like text alerts, and I want to add a verbal password." Ms. Patel's mouse stopped hovering. She glanced up. Real concern, not that corporate concern they train into people. "Are you okay?" I said. "Inner circle, Ms. Patel. I found out last night." The concern changed shapes like a cloud, understanding, and then something like respect. She took notes. She turned off the transfers with a final click that sounded like a door politely closing. She added a verbal password no one could guess, not even someone who knew me as well as a daughter-in-law who had learned my grocery list. She said, "We'll add transaction alerts for anything over $50 and freeze all external linkages until you approve them in person. I'll print everything for your records." "Thank you," I said. Paper. The world is losing its appetite for it, but paper has saved me more than once. Ms. Patel paused before I left. She said, "Miss Porter, you're not being mean. You're being a good steward of your own life." On the drive home, I took the long way. The maples in the neighborhood didn't know anything about inner circles. They just made shade for everyone. A pair of teenagers cut across a yard with basketballs and laughter, and a woman in a sun hat sprayed her hostess like she believed in small daily miracles. I purposely drove past the buttered biscuit, my Saturday breakfast spot, and let myself imagine their French toast without driving in to eat alone. 2 cars were in front of my house when I pulled onto my street, both idling. There's a hum some engines make when the driver is anxious, a quick, choppy sound like a hand jiggling the gas pedal. Both engines hummed like that. I passed by and looped the block. The maple out front dropped a few leaves like confetti for someone else's party. They had keys. I had given them keys because that's what mothers do, whether they're supposed to or not. I parked at the curb and went around back. "Mom?" Jake's voice floated from the kitchen like an apology that had missed its deadline. "We were worried." "Now?" "After the inner circle shower." Tessa stood at the counter riffling my mail like it belonged to her. "You should really get a cabinet for this." She said, "We don't want important things getting lost." "Put my mail down," I said. It was not a request. They both blinked, surprised, like I had just spoken in French. I took the stack from her, slid it under the Bluebird tin on the table, and turned toward the sink. I could feel my own breath. "I'm changing the locks today, and the transfers are done. If you need help, call your landlord, not your mother." "Mom," Jake said, the voice he uses when he's being reasonable and responsible in a meeting. "We can't just replace $650 like that. The baby's due in 6 weeks. I know exactly when she's due, because I was the one holding my calendar while Tessa complained about the obstetrician's receptionist. I also know exactly when you decided I wasn't part of your life unless I was paying for it. Tessa put on a smile so warm it could heat soup. Elaine, this isn't good for your blood pressure. We're trying to protect you. From my own checkbook? From stress and confusion. The word confusion was a trapdoor. I stepped back from it. I picked up my bag like I had somewhere to be, because I did. Ace Hardware. I bought Schlage locks that clicked in my hand like fresh seatbelts. You want someone to install these? The clerk asked. We've got 3 guys who will be honest with your timing. Yes, I said, and I need a recommendation for cameras. By dinner, a man named Dustin, with 4 arms like a person who knows where his hammer lives, had installed new locks and a Ring doorbell. You'll sleep better, he said, and I nodded even though the idea of sleep felt theoretical. I made eggs for dinner because I deserved not to cook something fussy. The house had that new lock smell. A little metallic and serious. I sat on my couch and forced myself to watch something silly, a rerun from a show with too much laughter in a can. I told myself I built a boundary and that boundaries were healthy. The sentences sounded like they belonged in a magazine you read at the dentist. 2 days later, I got a white postcard the size of an apology. Franklin County Recorder, notice of proposed deed activity. If you did not authorize a quitclaim deed or transfer on death instrument for 1172 Silver Birch Court, contact our office. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change shapes. I called the number listed, and a clerk with a voice that had seen things said she couldn't tell me details over the phone, but that if I didn't schedule a signing, I should come in with ID. There was a quiet in her voice that made room for my fear to sit without spilling. I hung up and looked at my dining table. The lemon bars, still in the freezer, waited like a small mercy. Next to them, my mother's gold clip holding the postcard in place. Someone had put me on a calendar for a deed signing, the way you'd schedule a haircut. Inner circle, I thought. People who lift us up. I stood very still and felt like my house was a boat and someone had just cut the anchor. I Googled elder law attorney Hilliard, Ohio, and dialed the first number with a real office and a picture that did not look like a diploma mill. Paula Nguyen said a voice that sounded like a trusted paper. Someone just tried to move my house out from under me, I said, and my son's wife thinks I'm confused because I won't pay their rent anymore. Don't say another word to them on the phone, Paula said. Forward me the postcard. Come in at 10 tomorrow with any documents about transfers and support. Bring ID. I put the postcard in a clear plastic sleeve and slid it into a black binder. The binder would grow like a living thing, swallowing proof. I went to the buttered biscuit and slid into my booth. Louise from the library walked in 5 minutes later, the kind of coincidence life gives you when it feels sorry for you. Louise is the kind of woman who carries 4 tote bags and knows which author fakes their acknowledgments. You look like you could use French toast and a plan, she said, sliding into the booth across from me, ignoring the fact that we hadn't planned to meet. I'll take both, I said, and told her the short version. When I said proposed deed, her spoon clanked in her coffee. Oh, honey, she said, you get your ducks in a row and you get them in writing. At Paula's office, I sat across from a woman in her 40s whose desk had a plant that was thriving and a pen cup with colored pens in order. She wore flats like a person who walks to the copier herself. I liked her immediately. She listened without interrupting, and when she finished, she looked at me like a person and not like a problem. Here's the thing about our county. They've got safeguards, but people find ways to drag their greed through any open door. Paula drafted a fraud alert for the recorder's office, filed a notice with the court to watch for any filings with my name on them, and typed a cease and desist letter that could slice through butter. I also suggest security cameras, a Ring doorbell, and a simple practice. Do not engage on the porch. Talk through the camera, record everything. That night at 6:17, my Ring doorbell captured a man in a blazer holding a leather folio with the smile of a man who was used to people being compliant. 2 women flanked him with clipboards. Behind them, Jake in a borrowed suit and Tessa with a grin that had more teeth than warmth. I did not open the door. I toggled to talk with hands that didn't shake. Hello? Mobile notary, said the man with the folio. We're here for Miss Porter's deed signing. No, you are not, I said. Jake leaned into the camera like a boy confessing to a science teacher. Mom, it's a simple form. Keeps the house safe if something happens to you. It's what responsible families do. It's what responsible families do, I repeated, the words flat as the blinds. I lifted my phone and hit record. You have 3 minutes to leave my porch or I'll call the Hilliard police. Do it, Tessa said, smiling at the notary while her lips barely moved. We'll tell them we're protecting you. Make sure you tell them about last night's party, the one with your inner circle. They left slower than I liked, but they left. I sat down at my table and placed the fraud alert letter on top of the binder. I could feel my heart beat in my throat like a big drum. The following morning, a woman in a gray cardigan knocked on my door with a badge on a lanyard and a way of standing that told you she had seen every room in the county. Miss Porter? I'm Miss Delaney with Adult Protective Services. We received a referral about a possible self-neglect concern. Would you have a moment? I would, with my attorney. I called Paula. She was at my house in 20 minutes flat, like she lived next door. I loved her for it. APS workers see everything. They see hoarding, empty refrigerators, and bruises hidden under sleeves. They see you on your worst day, when the dishes Mount Rushmore has formed in the sink and the cat box smells like defeat. Miss Delaney looked at my kitchen, the dishes in the rack, the checkbook by the bananas, the pill organizer labeled for the week. She looked at the calendar where I had written Mahjong with Gladys and a dentist appointment. She looked at me. Do you manage your own finances? I do, I said, opening the binder. Budgets, bank statements, tax returns. I can show you vendor names for every expense. The bank manager knows my name. The pharmacist knows my vitamins. Do you prepare your own meals? I do. I gestured at the leftovers in labeled containers with Post-its because I am that woman. Any unmet medical needs? I am bored, not sick, I said, and her mouth tipped up. Paula sat on the love seat like a general out of uniform. My client recently terminated voluntary support to her adult child, she said gently. That sometimes triggers scorched earth. Miss Delaney's expression changed like a person's does when the puzzle pieces click. We'll close the referral, she said. Here's my card. If they try another avenue, call me first. That night, a text pinged from an unfamiliar number. Open the door. We need to talk about guardianship. It's temporary, for your protection. There are words the world uses like corrals. Guardianship, protection, temporary. They sound like shelter until you feel the gates swing behind you. I blocked the number. I knew if I asked, how could they, I'd be asking the wrong question. The right question is always, what will I do now? I drove to Lou & Son's Auto and asked for full maintenance on my Civic, because being without a car when you live alone feels like powerlessness wearing a mask. Lou is 60, with hands that always look like he's been kind to a wrench. His son is 23, with a wedding ring he still can't stop spinning. They rotate the tires while talking to you like you're a person who has thoughts about torque. Keep an eye on your cameras, Lou said, casual but not. We've had people get bold when they feel entitled. A thick envelope arrived by certified mail 3 weeks later. It felt like a small phone book. In the probate court of Franklin County, a petition for emergency guardianship of one Elaine Marie Porter, filed by Jacob Porter and Tessa Porter. They attached statements from a neighbor who noticed paranoid behaviors and from a pharmacist who observed irregular medication usage. My pharmacist is Mr. Singh. He not only knows my vitamins, he knows the gum I buy when I feel lonely. I poured tea and sat with the envelope like you sit with a heavy story someone tells you in a hospital hallway. I turned each page. I recognized the cadence of Tessa's writing, the way she uses adjectives like sandpaper, irrational, paranoid, confused. It's a thing some people do, throw labels at you until something sticks. Paula took one look and clicked into motion. We'll schedule a neuropsychological evaluation with Dr. Evelyn Hart, she said. We'll get letters from your banker and your pharmacist. We'll subpoena the mobile notary. We'll file a counter motion showing their financial motive, and I want a copy of that recorder postcard in color. At Dr. Hart's office, I sat in a chair that had seen more fear than my kitchen sink. She asked me what day it was and who the president was. She asked me to remember 5 words and repeat them later while subtracting serial 7s from 100. She asked me to draw a clock and mark 10 past 11 because old clocks still measure things doctors care about. She asked me about my bills and the utilities and whether I knew when my house insurance was due. She asked me to tell her how I met Walter, and I did because some answers live in the muscles. You are more organized than my grad students, Dr. Hart said near the end, a small smile like a light flicking on. I'll have my report for the court by Friday. I went to the cemetery with a bottle of water and a rag because Walter's headstone needed attention, and if I was going to ask him to hold my fear for an hour, I could at least make sure his name was clean. I told him about Inner Circle, about Instagram, about the postcard from the recorder, about the notary on our porch. I told him about the lemon bars and the binder and Miss Patel. I told him I was tired of translating love into invoices and that I didn't know if I should forgive our son even if a judge told me to. The cemetery is the only place I can still pretend to hear Walter clear as a bell. Standing there with my rag, I heard the thing he used to say when a problem was chasing us down the hallway. "Elle," he'd say, "we'll handle what's in front of us. That's all there is." So for an hour, I handled the gravestone in front of me, and the fear got smaller. Louise reached out with a text that said, "Pie tonight?" She knows what pie does. We sat at the buttered biscuit in a booth that had been worn smooth by elbows and stories. People talk differently in diners. The waitress called them sweetheart and refilled coffee, even though she knew I shouldn't drink it at that hour. Louise pulled out a legal pad from one of her tote bags and made a list titled, "What They Can't Take." "They can't take your competence," she said, writing it neatly. "Dr. Hart says so." "They can't take your name," I said. "I've had it longer than they've been trying to change it." "They can't take your recipes," she added. "Even if they screenshot, they never taste like yours." "They can't take your friends," I said, and we smiled like kids. Paula's office became a staging area. Miss Patel sent a letter I want engraved somewhere. Miss Porter is prudent, clear, and exacting with her finances. Mr. Singh wrote on pharmacy letterhead that I purchase calcium, glucosamine, occasional ibuprofen and cough drops in winter, like clockwork, no prescriptions, no irregularities, no cause for concern. Miss Delaney from APS sent a note that said the referral had been closed and contained a simple sentence that made me cry. Miss Porter is doing fine. Paula subpoenaed the mobile notary and his 2 witnesses. She subpoenaed the recorder's office to confirm there was a proposed deed instrument drafted without my input. She clipped my ring clip to the motion like a person who knows what jurists like to see. "This is not the first time I've litigated greed wrapped in concern," she said. Court day arrived like graduation days do when you're older. I put on my best black suit and the pearls Walter bought me when I turned 50, the ones I wear when I want my neck to feel like it belongs to someone who remembers to stand up straight. I checked my binder twice and put on flats like a woman with miles to walk. Louise picked me up and we drove downtown in a car that knew what we were there for. The Franklin County Courthouse smells like cleaning solution and paperwork. People carry their lives in manila envelopes. The security guy said good morning twice to me after he looked in my bag and saw I was the kind of woman who brings a sandwich. Paula checked us in and nodded toward a bank of chairs that had seen everything. Jake and Tessa sat 2 rows behind, Tessa in black like she was at a funeral, maybe for the version of me that would have signed the deed. Their lawyer was the kind of man who wears his hair like it isn't allowed to feel. He had an old-school briefcase and a way of walking that said he'd won other cases like this by insisting mothers were foggy. He opened with a speech he probably practiced about concern and safety and confusion and the need to act quickly to protect a vulnerable adult from predatory influences. Predatory influences, I thought, like young adults with new SUVs and 3 streaming services. He called their first witness, a neighbor who lives 3 houses down, who mows at 7 in the morning on Saturdays like he is daring me to complain. He testified I installed cameras, changed locks, had strange visitors, women my age with banana bread, and raised my voice in the driveway. Paula stood up after his 7 a.m. self finished. "Do you know why she installed cameras?" she asked. "No," he said. "Do you know that a mobile notary attempted to get Miss Porter to sign a deed without her attorney present?" "I do not," he said, sniffing like someone had burned the bacon. "Do you extrapolate about other people's lives often?" she asked, and the judge gave her an eyebrow, which is how judges say, "Watch your line." Jake took the stand and said words like erratic and irrational and confused. He said I had changed overnight. He said he had watched me deteriorate. He used phrases Tessa uses, like "I felt so helpless," and he didn't stutter. This would have been easier if he had stuttered. I wanted to tell him if he was going to lie about me, he should at least have the decency to be bad at it. Paula asked him how much he had received from me in the last 2 years. He said he didn't know. She read the ledger numbers. She asked how many times he'd been to my house in the last year without asking for money. He said he didn't remember. She asked if he had ever brought a casserole when I had the flu. He said no. There was a little silence in the courtroom after that, because even people who watch TV know the casserole rule. Tessa took the stand and cried like a faucet. She said she had loved me like a second mom. She said she had watched me change. Paula asked when she last called me without asking for money. She said we talked about a lot of things. Paula asked her to give a date. She said she didn't remember dates. Paula asked if it was true she had held a baby shower and excluded me. She said it was inner circle. Paula asked if she had said people who lift us up. Tessa's mouth went thin. She said it had been taken out of context. Paula asked her to give the context in which that phrase was appropriate. Tessa didn't answer, and I saw anger replace tears like a storm changes to heat. The mobile notary testified and tried to look like he didn't know where he was. Paula reminded him he had a business license. She showed him the Ring video. He said he had been hired by a client to complete a deed signing and had assumed everything was proper. He looked at the judge and said words a judge likes, like, "I should have been more careful," and he left with his folio feeling heavier. Mr. Singh wore his white coat on the stand like a person who respects the institutions that deserve it. He looked at me with the kind of kindness that happens at a pharmacy counter where you can tell the truth without anyone acting like you failed. He said, "Miss Porter purchases calcium and glucosamine, as well as seasonal cough drops. No prescriptions, no irregularities. I did not sign any statement saying otherwise." He looked almost offended at the very idea of being used. Miss Patel testified like she runs a bank and her numbers wear belts. She said Miss Porter is prudent and clear. She keeps a budget that would put some of our younger clients to shame. Dr. Hart spoke with the clinical calm of a woman who has seen fog when it's real. She used the word competent multiple times with a kind of weight that feels heavier than a scale can measure. She described my performance on the tests without sounding like she was congratulating or blaming anyone. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand and placed my hand on the Bible because in Franklin County, they still do that. And I swore to tell the truth, which I had practiced for 70 years, because if you're not brave enough to tell the truth in rooms with wood paneling, you will end up telling a lot of pretty lies in rooms with soft chairs. "Miss Porter," Judge Kent said, "in your own words, why did you stop the transfers?" I said, "Because I realized I was paying a monthly fee to be treated like a stranger. It wasn't support. It was an invoice for access. Describe the proposed deed.
I got a postcard, I said. I called the recorder's office. They confirmed a proposed deed instrument. I hired a lawyer. A mobile notary showed up at my door with my son-in-law and 2 witnesses. I did not open the door. I told them to leave. That's my house. I mowed that yard after my husband's funeral. I know where every shutoff valve is. I know the names of the birds in that maple tree. I learned to do the gutters myself. No one is moving that house around me like they're rearranging furniture. Their lawyer asked whether I had grown hostile toward my family. I grew boundaries, I said. They don't fit in people who want to live on my account. He asked whether my new friends had influenced me. Yes, I said. They taught me you can love someone without financing their refusal to grow up. Paula objected to the tone. The judge sustained. I sat down. The judge left for 40 minutes. If you've never sat in a courthouse waiting for a stranger to decide whether you are allowed to live like yourself, I hope you never do. Paula sat with her hands folded, like a woman who prays only in emergencies. People shuffled papers like a forest losing leaves. Tessa applied fresh lip gloss, like courage. Jake didn't look at me. When Judge Kent came back, her face did what faces do when they have decided. This court finds Miss Porter fully competent to manage her personal and financial affairs. She said it like a sentence she could say again with a straight back if she needed to. The petition is denied. Given evidence of attempted deed activity and harassment, this court issues a protective order limiting unannounced contact. All communication will route through Miss Porter's counsel. Parties are advised to consider the emotional harm their actions may cause in pursuit of financial motives. There is a silence stories do not show you. It's the one where your body realizes it is allowed to stay yours. It's quiet as a prayer and loud as a marching band. I felt my knees and my teeth at the same time. Paula squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Good job." Outside, on the courthouse steps, Louise waited with her tote bags and a Tupperware I knew contained pie. "You did it," she said, hugging me like she meant it. "You did it, and you did it pretty." In the days after, the house felt like a ship after a storm. The air had that rinsed quality the sky gets after rain, and I walked from room to room picking up things I had set down halfway through fear. A magazine, the lemon bars, the laundry I had folded but not put away. I stood in the doorway of Walter's old office and said his name out loud, the way you test a light switch after the power comes back. I sold the house in September. I had imagined it for years, but refused to let myself do it for fear of looking selfish. It turns out selling your house isn't selfish when the house has become a battlefield. It's first aid. I took pictures on a sunny day when the maple was showing off. I cleaned out the garage while listening to old Motown and found a pair of Jake's cleats from 8th grade. I held them and talked to the boy who once fell asleep in the back seat with grass clippings in his hair. I cried like someone had cut onions, and the radio was playing a song that knew me. My new place is at Maple Oaks, the 55-plus community off Leap Road, a 1-bedroom with sunshine that runs its fingers across the floor in the morning. There's a walking path that winds around a small pond with ridiculous geese who behave like they bought the place. I signed up for a garden plot next spring. On Thursdays, a few of us meet in the commons with pie, apple in October, pecan in December, and we talk about boundaries like we're exchanging recipes. We call it Pie and Peace. Miss Delaney stops by sometimes after work. She says our group has saved her at least 4 cases because she can point to us and say, "See, that's what healthy looks like." The first night in my new apartment, I hung the picture of Walter and me at Buckeye Lake above the couch. He's wearing that blue ball cap I hated and miss. I made soup from scratch and ate it in a bowl with a chip on the rim, because chipped things can still hold warmth. I slept like a person who can put their phone on the kitchen counter and not worry someone will pick it up and call a notary. October came with leaves that negotiated gracefully with gravity. I volunteered at the library's book sale and watched toddlers choose books by the color of their spines, which seems like a good system as any. I delivered a casserole to my neighbor down the hall who broke her wrist slipping on a grape in the grocery store, a story that made me suspicious of fruit. I put a check in the mail to the food pantry because I wanted to be the kind of person who treats strangers the way I used to treat family.
Occasionally, screenshots arrived from someone who hadn't unfollowed Tessa yet. Their daughter was born, cheeks like ripe peaches, tiny fists that didn't know a ledger from a lullaby. The baby wore a pumpkin onesie on Halloween and a red bow at Christmas the size of a frisbee. They looked like a family. I hope they are. I hope hardship taught them what my money never could. I hope if they ever sit at a table and do math, they count the costs on their side of the ledger too. Once in December, Jake texted from an unknown number, "She looks like you." I looked at the words until they blurred. I typed and erased. I placed my phone face down on the table and made cocoa. Loving someone is sometimes a closed circuit you maintain by yourself when it's the only way to keep the lights on. One gray afternoon, I ran into Miss Patel in the produce aisle at Kroger. We stood between bags of spinach and a pyramid of oranges that looked too cheerful for that day. "How are you?" she asked, leaning in. "I sleep," I said. I laugh. I picked up water aerobics on Tuesdays. She smiled like a person who has been waiting for a repair to finish. "You look good," she said, "and you smell like lemon bars." "I brought some to Pie and Peace," I said. "We're starting to collect recipes." "Write that one down," she said. "Somebody else will need it." At Maple Oaks, a new woman named Bernice moved in down the hall after her son tried to put her on an allowance she hadn't asked for. She had a shock of white hair and a way of telling stories like she was dealing cards. The first night she came to Pie and Peace, she brought us store-bought pie and a sad laugh. "I used to think being needed was the same as being loved. Turns out I was just convenient." "Convenience is for microwave meals," I said. "We are a slow-cook crowd." We laughed like women who learned the lesson the hard way and lived to tell other women so they could learn it faster. It snowed in January the way it does in Ohio, and the maintenance guy shoveled the walk while I watched from the window and thought about the years I would have done it myself just to prove I could. I boiled pasta and ate it with butter and garlic and a book. I started a painting class at the rec center and learned the patience of waiting for watercolors to dry. I bought a heavier coat with a hood that could handle a headwind. I wrote a check to the group that helps seniors fight deed fraud, and in the memo line I wrote, "For someone's mother in a house like mine." On the 1-year anniversary of the court day, I bought a small cake and ate a piece for breakfast. I texted Paula a picture of me holding the slice like a trophy. She sent back a gavel emoji and a cupcake. We met for lunch at a little Thai place by the pharmacy, and Mr. Singh waved when he saw me. "You are famous," he said, and held up a newspaper clipping about a fraud ring arrested 2 towns over. "Your case helped," he added, eyes warm. "I just got loud at the right time," I said. "That's an art," Paula said. Sometimes late, when the apartment is soft and the pond goes to sleep and the geese hang it up, I walk from room to room with my hand on the walls like I'm thanking each one personally. I remember the notary's smile and Tessa's inner circle and my own son's voice saying guardianship like it was a gift. I remember the judge's voice, fully competent. I remember Miss Patel's note. I remember Louise in the diner. I remember the maples along my old street and the way leaves fall without asking permission from a committee. If you want to know what love looks like in a ledger,
It looks like giving without being erased to do it. If you want to know what a boundary is, it's just a fence around your peace. Good neighbors knock. They call you by your name. They bring a pie to the gate and wait to be invited in. The lemon bar recipe is still in my drawer, butter-stained and bossy. I make them now for Thursdays. The ladies bring their own heavy stories, and we turn them into slices we can share. Sometimes Miss Delaney shows up with a small stack of pamphlets instead of pie, and we slide them between our recipes like index cards. We're a strange little army with spatulas and legal pads. A knock on my door no longer feels like a verdict. It feels like a neighbor or a package. It feels like a girl from down the hall asking if I know how to get coffee out of a sweater. It feels like a life.
On Sundays, I sit near the back of the church because it's warmer there, and I watch the light through the stained glass because light looks like it tastes good when you're hungry for it. I sing louder than I used to. I stop at the food pantry on the way home to drop off soup. I remind myself that daughters and sons are born into the world the same, with no ledger. The ledgers happen later. I remind myself that love is not a subscription service with automatic payments. I remind myself that boundaries do not mean you are alone. They mean you are together with the right people. On a Tuesday at the rec center, a woman in my class painted a fence in watercolor and said it helped to see her life like that, a yard that is hers to mow with a gate that opens and closes. I told her that fences need paint and that paint chips, and we should stop being surprised that things require maintenance. We laughed. Maintenance is grace we give ourselves on a schedule. The first spring at Maple Oaks, I planted tomatoes and basil and 2 ridiculous sunflowers that looked like cheerleaders after they came up. I sat on the little bench by the pond and wrote a letter to myself the way Luis asked us to. It said, "Elaine, your life belongs to you. Spend it like cash at the farmer's market. Buy what is fresh and eat it in the sun. Save some for the freezer if you want to have a treat in February. Share if you feel rich. Don't apologize when you don't. Let the geese honk. Let the maple turn. Let other people's urgency stay theirs. Wear your pearls to water aerobics if you feel like it. This is not a rehearsal." If there's a girl out there holding her own postcard from a recorder's office or staring at a Ring doorbell while someone smiles on her porch with a folio, if there's a woman keeping a ledger she's embarrassed to show anyone because love disguised itself as a bill, if there's a mother told she's confused because she finally stopped being convenient, this is what I want to tell her. You are not an account number. You are a person. You can turn off the autopay and still be good. You can install a lock and still be loving. You can put your own name on your own house and your own calendar, and you can make lemon bars for people who remember to invite you. You can hold your line. You can call a lawyer. You can write a check to yourself. You can move. You can stay. You can do math, and you can make art, and you can let the phone ring out while you are stirring soup for nobody but you. I put a slice of lemon bar on a plate and took it to the balcony. The sun lay down on the pond like a cat. Somewhere a kid shouted about a bike, and a father yelled to wear a helmet, and a mother laughed. The geese announced their opinions. My phone buzzed on the table with a reminder for water aerobics. I took a forkful and closed my eyes. It tasted like butter and sugar and a small, stubborn freedom you could hold in your hand.